Hi there, I'm Ben Thorpe, Farm Management Support with Lely North America. Welcome to this episode of Lely Coffee Talks. Today we have with us Leah Lang from Iowa. She's going to share her experiences with her Lely Calm calf feeder. Leah, why don't you open up by just telling us a little bit about what your operation is like and how you use your calf feeder on a daily basis?
Yeah, thanks, Ben, for having me on the Coffee Talk. My husband and I have been raising calves for, I think, 3 years now. And we started out, we were doing individual pens and kind of was just a little hobby. We had 3 or 4 calves randomly that we decided to get from my dad. My dad has a dairy farm, and my husband also grew up on a dairy farm. But we decided Marshall wanted to feed more calves. So we went to feeding about 25 calves in individual pens, and then he wanted to continue to grow, so we decided that we wanted to do an auto feeder barn. We put in an auto feeder with 2 stalls to start with, and so we were feeding 50 calves in the auto feeder barn. We buy steer calves from 2 neighboring dairies, so we get them anywhere from 1 to 7 days old. It just depends on how often we go to the dairies to pick the calves up. So they're usually Angus crosses and some Holsteins. It just depends on who else is buying from the dairies at the time. But
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how the machine works and how it functions to feed the calves what they need?
yeah, so we have a a wood frame building with curtain sidewalls, and we do have an open ridge in our calf barn. And so in the middle of the calf barn, we built a warm room, and that warm room serves. We have 4 pens in the calf barn. So one pen is where we have our individual pens, and we background the calves from when we pick them up from 1 to 7 days. We'll background them till 10 days of age, and then we move them to the auto feeder. And so how we set our auto feeder up, we started out with just 2 pens, and we would fill one side and then we'd fill the other side. And just recently we decided we wanted to move towards 75 calves for the auto feeder. So we put in a third stall. And when doing that, we put 2 stalls on what we call our mature side and 1 stall on the starter side. And so we have a starter side where we put 20 calves. And then once they get old enough and aggressive enough, or depending how fast we're filling, if we just need to move, then we'll move them to the other side. So we always have about 20 on the starter side. And then our goal is to have somewhere between 40 and 55, however much room we really have on that other side. Right now, we have about 65 calves on the feeder, and this is our first group where we're doing the 3 stalls with it. So we didn't get filled as fast, so we're weaning some on that side in order to move the rest on. But we'll eventually have about 70 calves on the auto feeder at one time. So we have it set up that 2 stalls can drink at once. The starter pen can always drink, and then in the older side, there's 2 stalls, so it just rotates between those two on who's entitled to drink. We wanted to make sure that the babies always had access to milk whenever they came in, so that they trained easier. And
Sure.
that side has a pump on it too, so the calves don't have to work as hard to get the milk to the nipple. So the milk is basically always at the nipple, ready for those little guys.
Sure. Can you speak a little bit to the value of having milk available to those calves whenever they come to the feeder and what benefit you've seen in
Yeah,
regards to growth from that?
yeah. So we've experimented a little bit in how we do our feeding plan. The first group, we wanted to raising steer calves. There's a low margin of how much money there is per calf, right? It's not like we're raising heifer calves and we can afford to put as much milk replacer in them as we want, because we know we're going to get that return on investment when they milk later. But so our goal is to get them to grow as fast as we can in the auto feeder and yet still be profitable in doing that. So how we set it up is they can drink 8 liters a day, and they can come in basically 8 times a day if they wanted to. We set it up that they could get as little as 1 liter when they come up to the feeder, or as much as 3.5. So if we have some of those lazy calves that only wanted to come in twice a day, we wanted to make sure that when they came in twice a day, they still got over 6 liters of milk is our goal a day. So we set it up at 135 grams per liter, and so we're feeding about 2 bags, just shy of 2 bags of milk replacer per calf. And what we've seen is we do think we're seeing a bigger growth rate because they are drinking more times a day. We definitely see an increased starter intake. When they're weaning, the last group we did a calculation when we were weaning them, we thought they were eating approximately 5 pounds of grain at weaning. So the
That's
weaning
awesome.
process is much simpler, and it just seems like they take off they're on the same starter when they're in the barn as when we move them out.
Sure.
And being that they're already in that group housing, we think that has a lot to do with why we're getting better growth rates and why the
Yeah,
calves are just doing really well when we wean them.
awesome. Yeah, I think it's really interesting that, we think of auto feeders as a feeder for heifers and for those high value animals, but you can really make them work well in a terminal animal, raising dairy steers too. I think
Yeah.
that's
So we're selling the calves at like 450 to 600 pounds. And so for us, we don't have a lot of space. We just have 10 acres at the farm where we're at now. So we have to be able to turn the groups quickly in order to get them all through and for it to work well for us. So the faster we can turn them to 450, 500 pounds, the better, the more calves we can do in a year. So it's it's been helpful. We started our auto feeder in June. So we've sold the first group of calves already off of it that we
sure.
raised on it. And, we've got the next group pretty much ready to go, and we're ready to wean another group. So,
Cool.
yeah.
How has adapting the auto feeder as a technology on your farm created more time for you, or at least flexibility of time? Maybe it hasn't created more time, but
Mhm.
can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So, um, a lot of people might be aware I sell auto feeders at work. And so it was interesting to me. I wanted to do it at home. My husband is not a big technology person, but he was interested. He wanted to feed more calves. And I told him that the easiest way for us to do that, being we both work full time and are gone 10 hours a day, would be if we did an auto feeder because we wanted to feed the calves more. We wanted the growth rates. We wanted to do group housing because we knew that that was one of our struggles when we were individuals, that moving up the way our farm is set up, it was hard to transition them from an individual pen to groups of 25 with the way our next barn was set up. And so we wanted to try something like this. We'd experienced some stuff with nipple bars at home and had really good luck with that. And so we wanted to take it to the next step. My husband would argue that it doesn't save him any time, he thinks, but in the reality of it for us is that it we're a little different than a dairy that's filling every day. So we get anywhere from last time we had 46 calves in 2.5 weeks. So
Right.
we had a lot of work on the front end, but those last 3 or 4 weeks on the feeder, basically all we were doing was cleaning the feeder, putting the milk in and walking the pens and checking on them. And obviously the bedding and things once a week too. But, we weren't washing bottles and doing all that extra work. We were spending more time actually looking at the calves and monitoring them towards the end. So there was a lot of work on the front side, but it balanced out over the, the time period, I would say. But
Sure. So
we,
not necessarily a decrease in total labor hours, but just a flexibility in labor hours that
yeah,
allows
definitely.
you. Yeah.
If we wanted to spend more, I mean, with being gone, he's gone almost 12 hours a day a lot of
Yep.
times. So with being gone, it was just easier. I could start the chores with the kids by myself when I got home from work. He could come home and help me finish them, or, he can do them by himself in the mornings. And it was definitely more flexible. It would be a lot of work if we had 75 calves in individual pens.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think that's one of the values of a lot of our Lely products is the life that it allows you to live, right?
Mhm.
So, so if you could do something differently as far as purchasing an auto feeder, designing it, what would you do differently in your experience so far?
That's a really good question. I feel like I was at a big advantage compared to some dairies, being that I've worked with so many auto feeder barns at work. I was able to show Marshall some of the really successful farms that we have, and also some that maybe the barn layouts just weren't conducive for ventilation or things like that. So we went into it knowing exactly what we wanted to do. My husband's a carpenter. He owns his own carpentry business. So he had a really good idea of exactly how he wanted to build the barn and what he wanted to do there too from his own experiences. So we one thing I think we would change and we're going to change is we're actually going to put some more cement in. So we're going to have a little more cement right by the grain bunks. We don't have a lot of cement in there right now. And the thought was that things would drain better, but the lime pack becomes kind of a cement anyways. And so we're not getting the drainage that we want. So we would like to have more drainage around that area. So our plan is to put cement in so we could scrape that out every day, because
Sure.
when they're eating 8 liters a day and eating all that grain and we've got a water in there, there's a lot, we could do better with the drains and cleaning around that
Right.
area. So
Yep.
that's something we want to address. We also are thinking about, our ridge is wide open right now. And so it's 8 inches, I think, is how much we have up there. And we do get some rain in the center of our barn, and we do get some snow that comes in through that. So
Sure.
we'd like to eliminate that too. We've debated on how we would do that for sure. If we would put some type of a somewhat close the ridge, or if we would move towards a fan or something in the ridge. That's what Marshall would like to do, is some kind of a chimney effect with a fan. But
Yeah, I think you hit on two really good points there with regards to drainage and ventilation, two of the things that we see as probably the most critical when we talk auto feeder barns, right?
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the drainage is, I mean, they're eating and drinking and doing so well in there that it's just something you need to think about. And we have to bed it once a week, which we don't think is, I think that's 7 to 10 days is what we do. Every seven to
sure.
10 days, we clean all the straw out, put new straw in,
Yep,
and that's been really helpful to do that. So
cool. You spoke a little bit about this earlier and the growth rates and the data that the auto feeder gives you. Can you tell us a little bit about which data you look at and how you utilize that data?
yeah. So Marshall does a lot of the fetching with the calves and the managing of the calves. And the most valuable piece of information he looks at is, he looks at consumption percentage. So not necessarily how much liters they've drank, but the percentage of what they've drank. And
Sure.
so his goal is to always make sure they're above 70% or closer to 80%. And if anything is below that, even if he is 50 days old or however old he is, he'll go out and look at that calf and see, why did this calf not drink? Is there an event going on, or is it just that the nipple was too crowded and he didn't get time at the nipple, or what is going on? So he looks at the consumption percentage, and then he follows that up with if they've had breakoffs or number of visits. So, sometimes you'll see a calf visited maybe 6 times in the day, but it for some reason hasn't consumed all of its allotment.
Yep. Sure.
So, especially this time of year with the weather changing all the time, it's typically some type of pneumonia event, just because of all the weather and snow and fluctuating temperatures we've had here in Iowa. So yeah, he really likes that, because he's able to tell quickly what's going on, or even before the calf is sick, he's able to address it before the calf is down and out.
Cool. Yeah, I think there's a lot of data that an auto feeder can give you on top of, consumption, drinking speed, all those kinds of things help
Yeah.
to really diagnose those sick calves earlier, right?
Yeah, the drinking speed is really interesting, because yeah, you can really tell if a calf is slowing down, if they're at, or the even better, I like the drinking speed for telling that they're recovered from their event.
Right.
Their drinking speed maybe drops some, but it's better to see when they're doing well. If they get up in that 110%, you can tell, okay, what we did yesterday worked.
Sure.
Calf feels better today.
Yeah, that's always a good feeling when you can see that in real time and see that what they're doing and performing is showing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to, more, you spoke a little bit to the benefits of group housing and group feeding. Is there anything else that you want to touch on there with regard to group housing that you've seen,
Yeah.
maybe in general, as auto feeder barns moving animals from auto feeder barns to robots or things that way that maybe you can speak to?
Yeah. Honestly, the group housing part of it is what we like most about it. It obviously offers its own set of challenges with having all the calves in one pen and the different things there, but we really feel that social advantage of the calves running. I mean, when we bed on Saturdays, that is so fun to watch the calves run, kick all their heels up, and just being little calves. That is the best part about it. And we think that encourages the grain intake faster. They see other ones at the bunk, they're willing to go look at it, they're willing to eat more. They definitely train to the nipples well. If there's just a few calves in there, they can see other ones up there and they go up and they're curious. And we really think that has made a big impact on when we wean them. We used to do the individual pens, and we did struggle at weaning. And one of the things our vet talked to us about is that he thought we should go from individual pen. When we were in the individual pens a few years ago, he thought, well, maybe we should go to just 5 calves in groups or something.
Sure.
And the idea of the labor and the time and how that would all really work just didn't work for us, the way our barn was set up. So being able to have them in groups of 25 and even on the other side 40 now, it just makes it so much simpler. We can wean them into their big pens. They're ready to go. Yeah, we just think it really helps, I guess, with the growth rates. We're buying calves, we buy black heifers, black bulls, Holstein bulls. And some of those heifers we get, they're only 60 pounds when you get a little Angus Holstein cross. And they just hold their own in the feeder pen. And it's really neat to see them do well. And at the same token, some of those Angus Holstein bulls are 80 pounds when we get them, and they're easily all of 200 when we wean them. And they're thick and wide across the top. And, they've got that really nice hair coat. You can tell they're just ready to go and take on the world. And so that's been fun to see too.
Yeah, those are some nice growth rates. So.
Yeah, if you're in an individual pen and you give them a 4x8 space, and those last couple weeks you've got a almost 200-pound calf in that space, there's not room for them,
Right.
And you can see when you take them out of there, they just don't quite know how to run and different things. And so no, I tried to take some coats off some last week, and that was a bad plan. I needed help. So they're only 5 weeks old, and I could hardly get the coats off them. They were so aggressive, which was good. I'm glad to see that.
Very good. I think that concludes this session of Coffee Talk. Leah, I'd like to thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
And if you want to stay in the loop on any more of these great Coffee Talk sessions, go to Coffee Talks on our Lely website, and you can find out more.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.